fans because they only get to see you once a month.
Let's go crazy.
Let's now. David has to figure out how to push the button. Anytime you want to push the buttons, David.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the button. You keep.
I was going to do that. You want to do that now?
This is 2OF Entertainment.
So let me just say this because we are here and about. Really, David? There you go. David,
Push the button.
You have to push the buttons. Jeez.
Push
Hold
the
on,
button.
hold on.
There we go.
Oh, I'm back now. Sorry.
Live long and prosper.
Yes, may the force be with you.
Yeah.
So
I like the intro. It's getting more and more Star Trekky.
I know,
Well,
right?
not
Not
if you sell the Beamer, it won't be because there won't be any words for Talks Bollocks.
We might have to think of another name, honestly.
What was the one we came up with before we came on air? Not Brown Guy Car Talks Bollocks.
Because that talks bollocks, basically, yeah. Which is true. So
yeah,
it is what it says on the tin. It's that sort of thing, right? Yeah.
And
the car isn't gone yet.
It's not gone yet.
It could be Brown Car Guy says talks about what's in the tin, or what's on the tin, what's on the label, something like that.
Well, the tin. You see, the thing is, we've just gone full circle because the tin. Sometimes you refer to a car as a tin can, so that we've just gone way back to that.
Right.
And of course, the other thing is that we call this a sermon from the German, and I don't think I've done one from the car for quite a few episodes now. Anyway,
I was gonna say in a while.
In quite a while. The car hasn't gone yet. So for those people that know, this show is called Sermon from the German because I started doing it from the car, which was a 1989 BMW 325i E30. And I have put it up for sale, but it hasn't gone yet. So I've still got it. Now, the reason I put it up for sale is because there's quite a bit of work that needs doing to the bulkhead because there's a rust issue there. The rest of the car is perfect. Everything is perfect. There's a tiny little patch of rust that has to be addressed. It's a tiny little patch because that's where the drains for the inlets on the top of the just below the windscreen. There's inlets there. The water goes in through there and comes out through an inlet. That inlet was blocked over many years, and so there's a rust patch right there. Now, technically, it's a simple cut it out, fabricate a panel, weld it back in, job done, straightforward. Probably 500-600 quid worth of work there. However, the trouble I have with it is that where that patch is just behind the engine. So in order to do it properly, the engine has to come out and the dashboard will probably also have to come out. And so suddenly the cost of that has escalated. Now you're thinking that as a classic car owner, you should be aware of such things. You should be prepared for them. Well, the thing is, I understood that when I bought the car.
But your wife didn't, by the sound.
My wife didn't. She was less sympathetic. Well, to be honest, she was sympathetic. She's now less sympathetic. No, the main thing about the car is the point of the car was to prove that you could use a modern classic. So this is a 1988 car, as a daily driver. And for those that have been following my content regularly, will know that when I first got it about 2.5 years ago, I was doing that. I was using it 4 or 5 times a week, if not more. I was just every time I needed to go out, I just took it.
Right.
But where I live in London, there's a thing called ULEZ, the ultra low emission zone, and that doesn't allow the use of cars of that vintage unless they're over 40 years old, which mine isn't.
Oh, I thought it was just German cars that were banned.
Yeah, because this is the UK, they banned all German cars. No, this is not an elaborate edition of Basil Fawlty and Fawlty Towers. No, this is no. So what it was is emissions based. So basically, it's the car has to have a certain emission requirement. So Euro 4 for petrol, Euro 6 for diesel, and my car doesn't meet those requirements. So as a result of that, I have to pay £12.50 every time I take the car out of the car park here. And that's fine. I've got it on auto pay. But at the end of the month, that really adds up. And every time you get that bill, you're like, I think I'm going to use it a little less next month, And that goes on and that goes on until you find yourself using it barely 2, 3, 4 times a month at most. And now the problem that I have now is that, okay, well, that's a big investment that I have to make on the car for something that I'm not actually using that much, and it's not fulfilling the purpose that it was meant for. So
How long did it take you to realize that after your wife explained it all to you?
split second. That was like, yes, darling, whatever you say, darling. Yes, absolutely. You are the ruler. You are absolutely right.
Yeah.
Always. Absolutely. And I hope that you record that and clip that out and make sure you send
I'm
it
going to
to
make
my
that a short, and I will send it to you, and I will make sure that we play that, and every married man
On a
will just
loop.
keep that as his
Yes.
ringtone.
On a
Indefinitely
loop.
or
On a loop.
indefinitely. Right. On a
And
loop, constantly.
tag in Mrs. Humera Sheikh. Should that
Yes.
take? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where we stand at the moment. Now, the thing is, though, honestly, I still genuinely don't want to sell the car because I really do love it.
Right.
So I'm still stuck in a little bit of a quandary. And I tell you what, that if I could figure out how to justify the expense of that whilst keeping a hold of it, then I might try to do that. But at the moment, technically, it is up for sale, and the sermon from the German is going to be just Shazad.
It'll be have to call a new show. Yes, and if you go back to the very first, I was like the 3 or 4 shows, you were literally in the
Sitting in the car.
Yeah.
through the rainstorms. We've
Yeah.
been through cold weather. We've been through hot. We've been through, I think, like a telephone pole falling down.
Yeah.
We've done all that in the car. So
Yeah.
so we'll have to come. I like the tongue in cheek that brown car guy, speaks bollocks. I think that's a great. I think it's an awesome title. So I think that'd be cool.
Yeah.
So I do have to do this, which has nothing to do with the car, but I have a people of mine. They're in Egypt right now, and they literally are asking me on my WhatsApp, and they're watching the show. Is Meat Moo good? Yes, Meat Moo is a wonderful restaurant. If you want the best barbecue in the world, better than Austin, that it's the best place in the world. Go eat at Meat Moo. There, I've done my commercial. Leave me alone. I have work to do now. So they've been asking me.
But is it halal?
Yes, I think it is. I think it's in Dubai. That's why I go to Dubai.
Sorted. Send me a takeaway. I'm waiting.
Yeah, can I tell you? I go to Dubai. The first thing we do, the first night we have where we don't have to entertain people, is the first thing we do is we go to Meat Moo and order. It's like a whole cow. It's the best. And then from there we go to the Havana store, of course, get cigars, and then go have cigars later. But I mean, Meat Moo is like mwah, the best. Okay, I'm sorry about that, but yes, I'm very upset that you're going to be selling Storm from the German. I actually saw it on your Instagram, and I was like,
we should do a shout out then for 2 things. Then, first of all, if anybody's got a bag of money, then Brown Car Guy would like to have that. That's number one.
Okay.
If that's not possible, then what about all these budding people who want to renovate a car or something? That's a great project. And maybe if they're going to do it, you can film them doing it as well. So it might be a little bit of promo for them. And at the same time, you get your car fixed. So shout out to anybody who's,
absolutely. I'm always open.
Cars.
You're absolutely right, David. That is a possibility. There are such collaborations that do take place, and I am open to all such discussions. Absolutely. So yeah, if there is somebody out there, specifically in the UK, because internationally it might be a bit more difficult. But if there is somebody in the UK that would be interested in collabing on something like that, then get in touch. Absolutely. Details on the car, obviously, on browncarguy.com. You can go check it out. Done a full video on it, explain everything about it and everything.
It has, just so you're clear, it has 4 tires.
It's got everything, dude. It's got everything. It absolutely rocks. It's
got everything.
Car.
So let me ask you: after you sell this, because the wife says you have to, because as every good husband knows, you have to do what the wife says. What are you going to buy?
This is a big question. This is actually $1 million question, because the thing about that car, that back in the day, because I used to own one of these in the 90s, right? And in the 90s, the BMW E30 3 Series was quite common. A lot of people had them. Right. And they didn't necessarily have the best rep or the best image, So so as a young Asian guy in a black leather jacket, bombing around London in this thing, oh my God, there he is. He will know. Hello, stranger.
He's been commenting.
He's muted.
On your rusting.
Personally.
There you are.
Personally,
hang on, before we get to you, I just want to finish my thought. So the point of this thing, because you just asked me, what would I get instead?
Yeah.
And the reality is that I really don't know, because the kind of coolness, the cool factor, the appreciation that this car gets, I could get another car that would satisfy me as an owner and a driver, but I couldn't get another car that actually does what this car does in terms of the personality and the attention that it draws.
Lamborghini
you-
Countach.
So
Countach would
you're
do that.
so really this is brown car
was
guy
present.
talking bollocks. Then that's what I'm thinking.
Yes,
I was
Rizzo.
present at the birth of this car.
He was.
He was.
At the birth of
And
the
I-
car.
He was.
And I,
He
and,
was.
I, and I don't mean
In the factory.
1989. I was
In the factory in Bavaria.
The reincarnation. You should have said
Reincarnation,
reincarnation.
David.
The
Reincarnation
reincarnation.
of the car.
God.
Yeah, the reincarnation.
Now
The
we
second
are
coming.
talking-
The second coming. That's what it was.
Ooh.
Now we are talking bollocks.
I
about
think I
cars,
said
aren't
it
we?
best. I was present at the birth of this car.
Yes.
Yeah,
Now-
in Bavaria, yes, this is Lederhosen.
In
Yeah.
Bayerischer. It is Bayerischer Motorwerke.
No. In Birmingham.
Birmingham, Alabama.
Yeah. No. Alabama.
Yeah.
In Birmingham here.
Motorworks. Birmingham
Yeah. Okay.
Motorworks.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
You were present at the
No.
NEC.
If
In
I,
Birmingham.
If I may
Go on.
finish the sentence, the
Please.
sentence, because there was a comma and then someone jumped in the comma, right? Okay.
Yeah, well, you leave too much
I
of a
was
gap
present
after
at
the
the-
comma.
I
Seriously,
was-
it's not a
I
semicolon.
can leave
It's a
another. I
comma.
can leave a big
Yes.
gap. I can leave a big.
I like it. I love the show. Go ahead. So,
Now I'll give you the punchline at the end. Now
Yeah.
I'm going to make you wait.
Now we just go wait.
Now I'm going to expand.
Now we're
There
just
we
doing
go.
now we're just doing a Stanley
Oh.
Kubrick or something. You know, we're
Yeah.
just gonna.
I think in contrast to a classic German car, you should get something that's made of tin, made of plastic. That
All new cars.
that is obviously not German. That will just fall to bits.
Lada.
oh, Tesla.
Anything Japanese.
Or Tesla.
Japanese.
Japanese.
Oh,
I
my
think it would be a
God.
sermon from the Japanese.
Well, covering all of World War II.
Well,
I mean,
It
if we're going
really
it'll
doesn't-
be
It really doesn't
To
have
be-
the same ring to it,
to be
does it?
politically correct.
it doesn't, but it's arresting. Sermon
Yeah.
from the Japanese. What the hell is
No,
this?
we call it Jap.
Sermon for the
talk, and then
Germans sounds as if it's like, it's slightly contrived and it works and it fits, yeah. But sermon
Yeah.
from the Japanese.
So
get it.
specifically, if we drill down into this new
No,
concept of yours,
specifically, I think you should
specifically,
go.
which
Specifically,
Japanese car
It's
are
very
we talking
obvious.
about?
It's very obvious. It's a very, for me, I don't know. I think you've got a myopic attitude towards this. If you've owned a BMW 325, which I remember, we're talking approximately 1997
That's
slash
right.
1998.
I think the burnout lines
Can I-
are still
can I finish?
outside.
Can
I think the lines I left, the burnout lines, I think are still outside your house
May I
back in
finish? May I finish?
back
If
in
you've
1990.
owned that before, David's waiting for the punchline. I can see David is like ready for this punchline, right?
David fell asleep an
If
hour
you've
ago.
owned that car before, then you should perhaps pick another car you've owned before, which is a Toyota Celica.
Oh,
That's a
Capri.
pretty car.
Yeah,
That's a pretty
Is that
car.
the Capri?
that is. Yeah, well, this is the thing. Capri. It's funny you should mention the Capri. So this is a 1984 Toyota
Right.
Celica Supra, the first
Okay,
generation of
okay.
Supra, which came out of the Celica. And as you can see, it's very angular. It's got pop-up lights, and to me, this was like my surrogate Lotus Esprit.
Bloody hell!
So it was
what's
that
that?
kind of thing. And of course, Toyota owned Lotus at the time as well, and Lotus actually did do
Okay.
work on this car. So that was the significance of the car. Now, how I came about owning this car at that time, which would have
Grand Theft
been
Auto.
I
early.
think you must have bought it.
Or
I
a
did
Soul.
buy it.
Either way,
I didn't steal it, contrary to what some people think. In the early 90s, I think it was 92, maybe something like that. And
Right.
and you mentioned Capri, and I wanted a 2.8 injection Capri. Right, I wanted that Capri.
The
You know,
Kia.
Right.
yeah, I wanted one of those. The professionals or whatever. I wanted one of those,
Yeah.
and I was saving up for one of them at the time, and I think I was up to about two and a half grand. At the time, they were cheap. I mean, if you try buying a Capri today, we're talking
Brian.
15,
Brian,
buying a
you said
Capri
Brian.
today. No, I didn't. 15, 20, depends. 30,000, whatever. Back then, you were looking at probably 3 to 3.5. You could get a good one. I
Right.
was up to about 2.5, and I was working in a community newspaper. And one of the guys that used to contribute to the paper, one day I walked him down to the car park, and he walks up to this incredible looking, and it was two-tone, that one. So it was the silvery blue on top and darker blue on the lower part. And he walks up to this car, And I said to him, I said, I never figured you for a car guy. I mean, why are you rocking around in this thing? And he says, yeah, I just bought it from a friend because he needed the cash. And actually, I just need to move it on. I don't, it's not really, doesn't suit me. And so I said to him, I've got $2,000 in my pocket right now. He says, it's yours. So that's what happened. So then I ended up doing the Supra thing, and I never actually did the Capri thing. Now, fast forward to today. Go on.
So let's change the show title on there to Brown Jap Talk from Brown Car Guy.
Talk. Wow.
No, Brown
We're not
Car
gonna get
Guy
canceled ever.
in a very fast, nippy car.
And a nippy car, sure.
It'll be Nippon.
Going down a slope.
Yeah.
We're just going to use all the. We're just going to use all the.
Seriously.
Nippon Talk then. Nippon Talk from the Brown Car Guy. There you go.
My goodness. I think I'm probably not going to do that, because these cars now are actually even more rare than the E30 BMW. And there was one I saw recently, a pristine example here.
They're rare because they fall apart and they're in junkyards.
No, to be fair, the tailgate used to rust on them, and that's what happened to mine.
Yeah, well,
the tailgate, no, on the Toyotas and of that vintage, there was an issue with the tailgate, not only on the Supra, but even if you take something like a Starlet, one of the smaller ones, they all had the same issue. The tailgates would rust. And what would happen is that the water would go through the tailgate, get into the floor, and basically rust the whole back of the car, which actually is what happened to my Supra. So ultimately,
are you gonna tell your wife this story? Because if she's not watching the show and she does, you're not getting that car, because it's the same reason you have to get rid of your E30 just because there's rust.
This predates her. But what happened at the time is that this predates the internet. So at the time when I thought, okay, let me get a new tailgate. First of all, the car was quite rare in the UK. So I called around all the junkyards. Nobody had even heard of it. Never mind actually have a tailgate. And of course, the internet didn't exist. So you couldn't order, So now when I talk to the guys, there is actually a super club here. And I asked them, and in fact, funnily enough, in America, there's a person who's fabricating these 3D printing these tailgates specifically for these cars so that they can be used. But the car I saw the other day, somebody brought it. It was a white one. It was beautiful and it was pristine. And he said he brought it from South Africa. So he said I was looking around the world for a good example, and he said I found one that was rust free in South Africa. And that's the one that he brought over. So the cost of the car
to the UK. So that'll last 5 minutes in the winter.
Nah, he's only, because it's pristine. He's only going to use it for shows. He's only going to bring it out to shows and stuff like that. Of course, rust proofing techniques are much better now than they used to be back in the 80s. So you can protect the car significantly. But he spent, I think, I might get this wrong, but I think he spent about 15 grand on the car alone, and then another 3-4 grand to get it over. So we're talking nearly a 20 grand car now, for something that I remember I bought back in the day for £2,000. So it's increased.
20 grand is almost the same amount that you need to spend every year driving around London, actually.
Well, nowadays we do, I suppose, yeah.
The number 20 miles per hour, 20 grand car. This is
that's a thing.
London is quite prohibitive, but I'm quite interested if you are going to go in the electric direction.
So this is
not necessarily by choice, but by force of circumstance. Will you go and get something electric?
What you're going to say?
Well, that was a Freudian slip, wasn't it?
A Freudian lip.
That's another show we do later in the day.
Freudian lip.
Let's erect a new question here. So anyway,
there you go.
The thing about electric cars is that actually they do make a lot of sense. So for example, for you particularly, Reza, where you are,
stop. You just said electric cars make a lot of sense.
They can do, for in certain circumstances. So for example, where
anything
you are,
can make sense in certain circumstances.
Exactly. So where you are.
No. The question was, even though this show has got nothing to do with me, I just came on here just to ask you 1-2 questions. Would you get? Let me point the camera. Would you get an electric car?
There you go.
You know what you need to do, David? Put a couple of spotlights on that. It's like proper interrogation.
That's right.
Answer the question, brown car guy. Would you go electric? Would you do it?
I feel like all of a sudden I really do feel like we're in Germany at this point. It's like we will ask the questions.
Then actually, you can answer that question later. I'm going to ask you one more question, which is the question which I've been asking a few people, and it differentiates it differentiates car lovers and car enthusiasts from people who
Oh,
just
here he
simply
goes.
like the shape of cars.
People,
Are you
people
ready
who
for
buy
this
Russ-
question? Are
Is
you
this a
ready for this
Ferrari
question?
question?
This is a
Hit me.
fucking good question, okay?
Okay,
This one will let me know
here you
which
go.
way this person is swinging.
Would you just stop with the long commas and the long, pauses?
Hang on,
between-
there's
Dude,
a
you
comma
should do
there,
a
there's
show
comma
every
there.
Bloody
Saturday
get
with
on
him.
with it. And
Right, Shazad Sheikh.
yes.
F40,
How long is the show,
hang
David?
on. F40 or F50.
Hold on. I'll just transport him out. Hold on.
So here,
Wavy lines.
he keeps asking us on the cigar show. He
What
wants-
was that question? F40 or F50? Did you say?
Yeah, but you have to think about it because
No, I don't.
why?
No, I don't. No, I don't have to think
the
about
fact
it.
that the fact that you don't think about it in itself says something. So you
No, I don't think about it. I don't think about it at all. Not for a second. The answer is F40, and it will always be F40. It's as simple as that. And the answer, and why is the answer F40? Is because the F40 is the last car that was signed off by Mr. Enzo Ferrari himself. It's as simple as that. And
That
also,
is
why is
Do
it the
you know
F40?
why
Because
that was the
F40
last
is the
car?
car
Do you know
I
why?
remember.
Do you know why that was the last
Let
car?
me
So
finish.
he signed off.
Let me also finish. The
Well, he
F40
died.
is also the car that I remember me and my buddies queued up outside Hamley's, the big toy store in Regent Street, because we'd gone there a few days before to get the Borrego model. And they said, well, we don't have it yet, but it's coming on stock on this day. So before it was open, me and my friends were out there with our, I think it was 12 quid at the time. Now I think they're like 70, 80 pounds, but 12 quid at the time each. And we stood outside the gate until they opened the doors of Hamley's, and we rushed in and bought our models, which I've still got in the shelf over there, believe it or not.
I appreciate that, but that was when you were a child. Now you're grown up. Now you're
No,
grown
he
up.
hasn't.
Now you're grown up. You look grown up. You with the beard and the thing. F40
Here we
or
go.
F50, and the reason why I was asking this question is because F50 is rarer.
Nobody wants
It's a
one.
V12. And there's only one reason why Enzo Ferrari didn't sign off on the F50.
He was
He
dead.
was dead.
Because he was dead.
Right.
And I think
Exactly.
So that's the only reason why people, I think, was the
Let
major
me
reason why people picked the F40.
let me go back. Right, F40 is derived from the 288 GTO, which is gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. It's an icon, and the 288 GTO is derived from the 512 BB, the Boxer. Now, these three cars have a heritage and a lineage that is indisputable. And not only that, but there's a certain magic and mystique. When you ended with the F40, and after Enzo Ferrari passed away, anything that comes after that is contrived. It's a bit farcical. It's like,
So what do you think of the Enzo? What do you think of the Enzo?
I'm not a fan. And to be honest, the latest one that's just come out, which is the Ferrari F80, it's like you took a car and you just went, it's like you made a car of a paper model and then you went like that. And
It's
you
like a
just
Corvette almost.
you just squashed it. And the thing is, like, okay, when you see it, I mean, I remember when the first time I saw a LaFerrari in the metal or plastic or carbon or whatever you want to call it, I was literally like, whoa, that looks amazing. But do I want it? No. And my only car left on my bucket list, by the way, the only car left on my bucket list for my entire life is a Ferrari F40. That's the only car. I don't give a damn if I drive a LaFerrari, an F80, a Lamborghini or whatever. It doesn't really bother me at all. But an F40, gosh, yeah, that's one car that I do want to drive. There's something magical about it. There's something
Wife
mystical
agree with
about
you
it.
on that, or is she? Your wife's
Right?
up for that as well. Getting
His
shopping
wife's
in
not
that.
letting him buy any of those cars.
Your wife's
She wants a Pagani Zonda. So
right. Oh,
There
for
you go.
shopping at Tesco's, obviously. Yeah.
Asda. She's going to go to Asda.
Asda. Go to Asda with it.
She'll be able to put one little package of eggs in the front
So
seat.
can I ask a
That's it.
follow-up question?
Go ahead.
Question?
Actually, I
This
didn't
is
answer
a
your
slight-
original
this
question.
is- this is
I
the
didn't
first
answer
time
your
I'm
original
asking-
question.
No, the follow-up question is, because you're a motoring journalist, let me ask you a slightly harder question. F40
There it goes.
or Countach?
Ooh.
Countach I've driven. F40 I've never driven.
No, it's not competition. I'm just asking you to tell me which one, if you had to, because then you go on about the poster generation and the Countach was on there and
So what do you
Marcello
asking?
Gandini.
What is
and
better?
which Countach?
Which
Well,
one
yeah,
would you want?
Let's go for the last one, the Countach anniversary.
What are you asking? What is better or what I would own?
No, you have a choice to own, drive, keep for the rest of your life. It's not money, money not an issue. You will never sell it. This is your sort of a last amazing purchase to see out the rest of your 50 years on this planet, right? Okay. And you'll drive it every day. You'll polish it with a nappy every single day.
Got it. As a
Which
daily driver,
one is it going to be? Is it going to be
It'll
an
be the
F40?
scoop with the basket.
as a daily driver, it would be the F40.
Ooh, I like
I
that.
don't want to hear these words, daily driver. I want you to tell
You just
me
said.
the thing.
You said
You
that
asked.
you would own it.
I know,
You
but it's
said,
not
and
just
you own
about
it and you'll drive it.
driving. It's
Now, the
about
reason
looking
why-
at,
the reason
admiring.
why I've driven the Countach twice in my life, and
Well,
the
it's a Countach, actually.
it blew my mind away, but I couldn't see a damn thing out of it. I could only see in front of you. Can't
It doesn't
see
matter as
anything
long as
around
people
you.
can see you in it.
So that's one thing. Second time that I drove it in Dubai, and I remember we had arranged to do a photo shoot in the middle of the desert, and I asked the owner, John Herman, great guy. He's got two of them actually, and I asked him to meet us at a certain location, and I drove to the location in the Golf GTI of that era, whatever year that was, and I remember jumping out of the GTI and then into the Countach, and the only thing that I could think of was how slow and cumbersome and laborious, the Countach was. I thought the GTI would run rings around this thing. The GTI will not have the drama, the theater, and the sheer style of a Countach turning up. No chance. But to daily drive a Countach is impossible. It's just a complete nightmare. You can't even reverse that thing. Whereas an F40,
you put the door
You
up.
have to put the door up.
you put the door up and perch on the
out.
sill.
Reverse.
Yeah. How comfortable is that? So,
Cool.
and also even people like Harry Metcalf, who's got one over here, subsequently installed power steering into it, because even he was like, "Oh, this is ridiculous," So that's not to say that the F40 would be much better, because the F40 is still pretty much a race car. But there are some, again, not having driven it, but from what I understand, it is a little bit more car-like, and you could probably get away with driving it more often. So that would be the answer. But I didn't answer your question about the EV.
But wait, before you answer this EV question, I will say something. I've driven a LaFerrari. In fact, last week I was with a LaFerrari, and we're thinking about getting engaged. But anyway, I like the LaFerrari. I was the convertible, the whatever it's called, and I like the way they handle. The problem I have with the problem I have with the LaFerrari is they have that cute little electric motor in the front, and when it goes bye, I have purchased a home.
Yeah.
And that's that's what we were discussing last week about it. It was like, it's a great car. It handles, it looks beautiful. It's got pretty much everything you want, except when the motor decides it's kaput $350,000 later, and they have to fly in a specialist because it's nothing more than a glorified race car. It becomes this event. And whether it's a daily driver or just even a car in your collection, in my humble opinion, I don't want to make it an event. If it breaks, fix it. I don't need to call in 47 guys named Alberto from Ferrari factory to come and fix my car. You know what I mean?
To be honest, that is the case for every Ferrari and every exotic car. You take a McLaren F1, you take the original F1, right? There's only one laptop in the world that you can use that will talk to that car. And it's all out of date, so there's only one laptop that exists with McLaren that they use to actually talk to that car. So you're always going to have that issue. Now, the thing about the LaFerrari is that, yes, it has to actually, I've seen them in Dubai, and there's a line of them in the Altair dealership, and they're all plugged in. They have to be plugged in. They have to keep them plugged in the whole time. Whereas you go to an F40, you just put a key in, start it up, and off you go, sort of thing. So
and
there's
Ferrari,
something to be said. Go on.
Can I ask a really boring question? Because I remember when we first had you on the show, you said you didn't want to talk about cars.
I know.
Well, now we're talking about cars.
No, we're talking
about cars. But just like to bring us down to like the real world.
Yeah.
I had a discussion with somebody yesterday. I saw a Audi Quattro Estate. Car, and I said to the guy, I said, if I'm not mistaken, that's an extremely fast but very understated car. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yeah, most Quattros are high performance vehicles. If you get like an RS6 or an RS4, then it would be very, very quick. And they're generally, the Quattro tends to be the more performance orientated car. And this goes back again to talking about the supercars of the past, like the Ferrari F40, like the Countach. In contemporary terms, they're not really that quick. They really aren't. Whereas the LaFerrari that you drove, that would be ballistic. It would be ballistic.
Yes.
It'd be like a missile. But here's the payoff though. You could get into a LaFerrari or Bugatti, whatever, you know, and you'd go really quickly in a straight line, and then that would be it. That'd be it, because you know the skill levels required to really throw those cars around the corner, to really get the best out of them in terms of handling and grip and all the rest of it, are way beyond mere mortals can achieve. You know, like I would say that I can't get the best out of those cars, right? Whereas if you take something with low grip, even like an F40, you could probably have a bit of fun with it because you know it's going to let go at a certain point. Whereas if you let go in a LaFerrari, then you'll meet your maker after that. It's as simple as that. That, you know, that's the end. Goodbye. Oh, hello, Mr. Enzo Ferrari. I was just in one of your cars. You know,
I was admiring your car. Yeah.
That's what's going to happen. Now, when you talk about straight line speed, and to segue this very nicely back to EVs, when you talk about straight line speed and you talk about, well, the only pleasure you get from supercars is that ballistic acceleration. Well, the average EV today, the average family SUV can out-accelerate one of those cars. There's a journalist in America, Camisa, I think, Jason Camisa. I think he's doing videos for Haggerty. He's a brilliant guy. And he drag raced recently a Miura, and he had a classic VW T2 transporter. I think he had a guy on an electric scooter. He had a guy on a bicycle. And I think he had the brand new VW ID Buzz. So the electric version of the transporter, the latest one. And that ID Buzz with the Lamborghini Miura and all of these other vehicles, the ID Buzz crossed the quarter mile and was off to find a charger before any of the other things were anywhere near that finish line. The next to finish was the Lamborghini Miura, but it was like way, way, way behind that. Way behind. So this thing had just shot off and taken off, and that was it. And this is a bus. This is the ID Buzz with like 7 to 8 seats in it or whatever. So the whole, you know, the paradigm shift, if you like, of performance motoring is so beyond recognition right now that really I feel like we're going to go into a reverse loop where we're not going to be looking at supercars. We want the smallest, lightest thing with the skinniest tires and the smallest three-cylinder engine to actually go and have fun with. Because when you get into something like a LaFerrari or something, you know, you can do the woo-ha for 10 minutes and take some selfies. But after that, you're like, this is boring.
It's a car.
It's a car.
Well, here's the thing. Supercar prices are coming down. Like, I mean, like, you know, I was talking to someone the other day about something we spoke about off air. And he was telling me when he bought it, he paid this and he wanted to sell it for this. And he's like, now I'm going to sell it for this. And I'm like, keep talking, because they're coming down and people are realizing that the EVs take the Spectrum from Rolls-Royce, right? It's $500,000. It'll outrun any supercar. And that's a 6,000 pound or 3-ton vehicle that goes, you know, 0 to 60 in no amount of time. And that's, if you look at something like that, and even Jay Leno said it's faster than most of his supercars, and he owns everything, and it's more comfortable. He said, so I've got the best of both worlds, and it's got regenerative braking, which to me is the coolest thing in the world, because he said, I left my house with 280 miles. When I came back, I had 300. And I'm like, see, to me, that makes sense. And then the question boils down to, do I really want a supercar, if you will, because now there's gas, or do I just get like, if you will, a Rolls Royce, and I don't worry about it. I just park it at night and charge it, and I'm done.
So again, the thing is, you got to put these things into context. And when I said like for some situations, it's the right thing. So that thing you just said about an EV actually having regen, this is what a lot of people don't understand, and it's something that needs to be communicated. EVs in cities are fantastic because that's where that regen actually works. But if you take them on longer runs on motorways and stuff like that, then they deplete their battery charge very, very quickly, like way quicker than what the manufacturer says.
Put the heating on, put the radio on.
And sustained acceleration,
the lights,
right? Sustained acceleration is what is, you know, because don't forget, a sustained acceleration at speed on a motorway, there's drag, you know, so the car, you know, you're taking a box and you're pushing it through the air at speed. There's a lot of energy that's going into doing that. Now, around town, you're not doing that because you're stuck in traffic. You stop, go. And like you said, you get a lot of regen. So I had a mini electric one time, a couple of years back, and I'm in northwest London. And the family wanted to go down to Westfield shopping mall over in East London. And we thought, and I had the mini, I thought, well, let's do it in that. But then I thought, when I get there, I'm going to have to find somewhere to charge it. I'm going to have to find somewhere to plug it in because we've got to get back and stuff like that. actually, because we did that journey in the middle of the day and we did it around the North Circle, and it's pretty much stop go traffic all the way. When we got there, the charge was exactly the same.
Right.
Like it hardly used anything, you know, and it was just like, whoa, this is incredible. Conversely, that evening, late at night, when we were coming back and the roads were emptier and we were able to sort of open it up and really use it, I think I used more than a third of the charge just on the way back. So
I wouldn't want to make a trip in one, like whether it's the Rolls-Royce, the Tesla, the Porsche, whatever it is. I don't want to make a road trip because I have an issue waiting 30 minutes to charge my car. I'm okay with I go to a gas station and put petrol in, it takes me 5 minutes.
If you can get on, because it's 30 minutes for you to charge, but there's 3 or 4 people in front of you that have got there and have the same issue.
Yeah.
Well, here in America, it's a little different. Here it's a little
holding
different.
Everything back.
If most of the gas stations, and even now at Target and Walmart, all these places, they have a line of chargers and they're never all busy. Like, you know, you can go to a place and they'll have, say, a gas station may have 10. You go to Target, they've got 50. You go to here, they've got 10. So there's always chargers available. And then, of course, you have your house, right? But it's just this thing, like, it may be nice to take a road trip. And a friend of mine told me this. She said, I took a road trip from Houston to Waco. And first of all, you go to Waco, I have no idea. But anyway, and she said, I'm going to rent a car. And I go, oh, you know, get like a cool sports car. It'll be fun. I said, what did you get? She got a Hyundai Electric. And I was like, what? Like it's like 350 miles. The mileage on that's like 275. So at some point they had to stop and charge it. And they had to wait like 90 minutes. And I was like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Like I would never do a trip with it. To your point, around town, or if you're, an hour outside of town is okay. But if you're going to go like from just say New York to Los Angeles, airplane, or get me something with gas. Because what are you going to stop every 200 miles is nothing to drive.
Well, the sales in Europe of EVs is absolutely plummeted.
Yeah.
Because we have an infrastructure problem, and the sales of hybrids have gone up because that seems to be the sort of happy compromise. And we have friends, and he would go, "Oh, we were going to go to Italy," and he swapped his car with his dad. His dad had a hybrid, and he had electric. He said, "Because I don't think I'm going to make it." And then you have this stuff on your app. And you can, if you have an app, but then you have to go to these particular places to charge up. And I've always said, EVs are sponsored by McDonald's because you've always got to park your car up somewhere and eat something. And he said, yeah, I got there. I'm in the middle of France. He said, there's like 100,000 people in front of me. So he has to charge. And he said, add all that up. What are we doing? We're sitting in a restaurant. Kids are getting, gnarly. I have something else to drink. He said, at motorway restaurant prices. He said, you add that all up. He said, it's just absolutely crazy. And other people we know, like I live here in a row of houses, and we have here 2 electric points. Yeah. We couldn't charge the car up from the house. And most of Europe lives in apartment blocks. Yeah. How the hell are they going to? How do you charge your car up?
Same situation here. I mean, that's what to answer Reza's question. Like for example, for my wife, an EV would be perfect because her commute is very short. The school is like less than 2 miles away, and then the rest of the time it just gets used for shopping and stuff. That's it. But there's nowhere to park at home. So it's like, well, what do we do? How it would take 2 hours out of a week to just go and charge it? It doesn't make any sense. Yeah. And here in London, like you would think that we should be littered with charging points, right? But I'm in Northwest London. Right, I know there's 2 at the Morrisons, and I know that there's 2 in the Asda, I think, and then there's nothing. One, and then one time I went there, those were broken. There was a queue at that one. Then I had to go to South Harrow, and I got all the way to South Harrow to a McDonald's by coincidence, and there was already 2 cars in there. And then I waited an hour for one of them to finish before I could then plug in my car. So there is, like I say, there are fundamental issues.
And you have a parking problem as well. You're not allowed to park your EV in a closed parking. So
well, that depends. That's a lot of individuals are saying that. I mean, it's some parking lots.
It's factual here.
Really? That's interesting.
In Europe, if you have a block of flats and it's got a closed parking space, then it has to do all sorts of new stuff, fire hazards, etc., or they just say you can't do it.
Interesting.
And friends of ours have just bought a new apartment, and I said, well, what about they're going EV? I said, what are you going to do with that? Oh, well, we're lucky because it's not. It's they could just drive into it. It's got like 3 walls, so but it's underneath the apartment block. That's okay. But then you're talking also places like Norway. What is it? 80% of the population have EVs, and it's everywhere.
No, not 80% of the population have EVs. It's 80% of new car sales.
And new car sales,
yeah. But actually, there are still a lot of internal combustion engines running around Norway. Believe me.
Yeah.
But yes, there's a very high percentage of new car sales, and the Nissan Leaf was at one point the best-selling car in Norway. So no, you're absolutely right. I didn't know that there were specifically laws regarding that, but there are a lot of myths around.
Well, it's health and safety. It's not like somebody says you can't do it, but the insurance company says, well, you know, if it catches fire,
let me just address
we've
that.
got a serious problem.
Let me just address that as well, just so that people are clear, because there's a lot of myths out there and stuff about this sort of stuff. EVs are far, 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 far less likely to actually catch fire than an internal combustion car. That's the reality of it. If you look at all the stats, all the data, that's what that tells you.
When they do,
that's what I was going to say. The problem that we have is that when they do, there's no stopping them. In fact, literally some fire services are like, we just let it burn out because there's nothing we can do. We can't actually put it out. And the reason for that is because of the way the batteries are constructed. They're inside a casing. The casing is designed to avoid exactly that happening. But the result of that is when you get something called thermal runaway, is that you can put out a cell here, but by that time it's ignited a cell further inside that casing, which no fire service or anybody can get to. They've tried various things like resorting to dumping the entire car into a container of liquid or just sealing it inside a container so it's deprived of oxygen. But these cars have been known to reignite, you know, several hours later. So that's the problem we have. And we have actually got a law, I think, in garages here, where if a car is there for accident repair, it needs to be kept a certain length away from everything else. And most garages are like, we don't have the space for that. You know, we can't line these cars up, you know, in all these different places.
It's the same as if they break down. There has to be a special breakdown truck to come to pick them up.
No, I mean, most of the breakdown recovery services are now trained both in EVs and stuff like that. But generally, nowadays, if you realize that unlike the old days when the breakdown guy would come along and he'd be like, take out his spanners, he'd say, oh, I'll get you back on the road, no problem. Give me 10 minutes, I'll sort it out. I'll change a cable, I'll change a belt, whatever. Nowadays, invariably what happens, even with petrol cars, that they'll come and they'll open the bonnet and they'll stick a computer and they go, right, recovery. That's it, you know, because you can't fix these things by the side of the roads anymore. It's just not, it's not possible. Same applies to ICE and same applies to EVs. Old school cars, yes. New school cars, you can't. So yeah, that is a fundamental problem with them. But generally, they are safe. The batteries are getting better and better. The technology is getting better and better. But we still will have this problem with infrastructure. Until we have the infrastructure, you know, because the reality is that people aren't naturally objecting to owning an EV because people want new, cool stuff.
Well, they are because they have,
you know. But no, they do because they don't see it as something that fits into the convenience that they require.
We have a road
in their
tax
lifestyle.
here, which is relevant to weight.
Yeah.
And these things are incredibly heavy.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't know that your road tax was related to rate because ours here is related to emissions.
Yeah.
So over here it's the other way around. Yeah.
It's weight. So as in a lot of places in Europe as well. Yeah. And of course a lot of the roads can't take that weight anymore either. They're all starting to. You see that all these things are. They're worse than
fundamentally in Europe. There's going to be a major problem with all of these target ambitions to go full electric by 2035. I just don't see it happening. Particularly what you're saying.
You can see what's happening. German manufacturers can't do it. Stellantis want to do it, but there's no.
Oh no, Stellantis are shooting themselves in the foot, left, right, and center. Stellantis are in big trouble because not only have they've tried to electrify the European fleet, but they've tried to electrify Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep in America, and of course now there's a massive backlash there. Nobody wants the new Charger because it's electric. They were waiting for the 6-cylinder one. No, it's gone a bit crazy. Now the thing is, there is an interim solution, and the interim solution is hybrids, and like you were mentioning earlier, and especially. The main appeal of electric cars is the fact that there's nothing coming out the tailpipe because there is no tailpipe. And so in congested areas, in congested cities where they do tend to work quite well, they're also beneficial because they keep the air cleaner. And in a confined area such as a city, that's a good thing. That's a benefit. Yeah. Now, if you take aside the fact that you can't own an electric because of all the problems we've discussed, then hybrids, particularly plug-in hybrids, are actually the best interim solution. Because if you are able to plug in at home, if you're fortunate to be in that position, most of the latest generation of plug-in hybrids are capable of between 40 to 80 miles purely on EV, right? So, and the average commute for most people in the world is generally less than 30 miles per day,
Yeah.
right? So if you
But
think of it that way,
my neighbours have an hybrid, and that's 161k that they can run on the hybrid.
yeah, exactly, on the electric. So you can,
Yeah.
so basically you can charge at home, you can go to work, do all your daily chores, and actually come back home, and you've not used the petrol in the tank at all. And in fact, but the advantage there is that if you do suddenly need to go down to Waco, for whatever reason you want to go to Waco, you can do. You can do, because you can put fuel in it like a normal car, and off you go. It will just behave like a normal car. The only thing I would remind people with those type of cars is that fuel can expire. So never leave fuel in a tank for more than 6 months. Go and run the car and get rid of the fuel and then replenish it, et cetera, et cetera. Similarly with EVs, the funny thing they found with EVs is that what was actually the problem they were having when they were coming to servicing them is the brakes were being seized. Brake pads were fine. People think because of the heavier weight, the brake pad, no, because people aren't using the brakes in an EV because it's using regen to slow down. And because you don't use the brakes, they tend to seize. So what they often advise people is that every now and then take your car out and use the damn brakes. Just really press on them to make sure that they're working. But we're in this crazy transitional period right now in terms of mobility. The reality is that nobody knows what the answer is. And anybody in the car industry that tells you they know what the direction of travel is right now, they're lying. Because if you look at all the major manufacturers, you look at Ford. 6 months ago, I did a video from Ford saying, somebody high up in Ford saying, yeah, we need to re-strategize. We need to go back to smaller cars, mass market cars, because that's where we made our name. That's where we grew our business from. And then just recently, I made another video where, was it Jim Farley, isn't it? The CEO of Ford, right? So, and he just made a statement. He said, no, actually, we're going to abandon that market and we're just going to go for performance and premium. That's it. Because they're now realizing that actually, when it comes to most of the governments and authorities trying to push forward EVs, the legacy manufacturers, the mainstream legacy manufacturers have lost that race already to the Chinese. The Chinese have already won that. And so a lot of them are coming to the realization is that we're not going to be able to defeat the Chinese, so we'll go in a different direction. Or they are looking to the possibility that maybe the market is going to go full circle, and actually we're going to end up right back where we started. So we're just going to go into a holding pattern. Because for a manufacturer, a legacy manufacturer, to make that shift from internal combustion engine to EV is a much bigger investment and far greater consequences.
They've already done it, haven't they? I mean, Stellantis, that's why they're having such problems, because the EU directive was 2035, and that's it, guys. And so they've adhered to that, but there's no infrastructure here to support that.
Yeah,
well,
same here.
But by saying that there's no infrastructure doesn't mean say there's nowhere to charge. But the amount of people that could use, would like to use the EV, are just, fine by me. But where would I plug it in? I'd have to have a cable 50 meters out of the house down the street, and somebody's going to fall over it.
And then you get sued for that.
I get sued for that. So,
well, BYD just outdid last quarter Tesla in sales.
And no, BYD is the top-selling electrified car manufacturer in the world.
But BYD, I've seen their stuff. I've seen their supercar, which is like $100,000, which looks better than anything that's out there. I like the fact that it can bounce. But I mean, I've seen their car, their SUV, their cars. And then one thing that I'm fascinated with is every time I see it and read about it, they can go, they say, to 1,000 to 1,500 kilometers, which just say 600 to 800 miles on a charge. So they've already said, look, we've made a better electric car. Now, I'm sure the radiation poison you get will kill you before you get to 600 miles. Well, you can take what you get. But I'm like, they're making a good product. And here we are. Porsche, I think there's like 330 on their electric. And I know Tesla has claims all over. I know Rolls-Royce says it does about 300. But I'm like, but why are Chinese coming up with like
600? Yeah, Volvo.
I think so.
I did an article about this. Yeah, I did an article about this recently. There's different chemical compositions of batteries that are being tried out, and some of them are getting really incredible results. But those batteries aren't yet in full production. But we are going to get things like solid-state batteries, which are probably going to come online in about 2 years, and they're going to offer quicker charging. They're going to be safer, and they're going to offer a little bit more range. But there will be compromises. There will be trade-offs. So you get the batteries with a massive range, but then the charging time will be longer, et cetera, et cetera. So there's always going to be an issue. But having said that, on the cutting edge of innovation, you mentioned BYD, and you mentioned that supercar. The things that they're doing, I mean, they've taken the rule book and they've thrown it away, right?
Yeah.
So you've got these cars like that supercar you mentioned, which can do something called a tank turn, which means that it can turn on the spot, right? Which means also, if you remember back in, you remember the Day of the Jackal and the Citroen DS, and you remember the fact that it saved the president's life because of the fact that the Citroen DS could run on 3 wheels. So you could shoot one tire out and it could still keep going. Well, this supercar that you just mentioned can do exactly the same thing. You could take one wheel off it and it can still drive. Additionally, the SUV that they've just come out, the Yang Wang something, it's called. So the BYD has a luxury arm called Yang Wang, which I don't even want to get into the connotations behind that. But anyway, Yang Wang. So they have an SUV, which basically, considering the flooding, the tragic situation we've just had in Spain just now and around the world, we're getting increasing incidences of flooding. They've engineered this SUV to be able to basically float in water, but also motor along in water and change direction. Now, they say this is only an emergency thing, but people have been trying it out and it does work. So it's incredible. They've thrown the rule book out and they're like, we're just going to try this because we can. Why not?
And their governments like do it. And everybody wants one. And of course, here in the States, we can't, because no matter which idiot wins tomorrow or whenever they figure it out, they're going to add tariffs. So we'll never see it, because by the time it gets here, it'll be too expensive.
Yeah, Europe has added tariffs. Yeah, Europe has added tariffs to Chinese vehicles, but China's going to find a way around that.
Well, BYD are opening a factory in Turkey, and because Turkey is a EU grey area, let's leave it there. Then,
Yeah, exactly. That's what they're going to do, because at the moment in China, they have now reached saturation point, because the initial rush in China was to actually provide enough cars for the market that they had. Because don't forget, it's astonishing to think that only recently China, the main form of transport was a bicycle. And they've gone literally, like in 2 decades, they've gone from that to, like, overpopulation of cars. But the manufacturers have reached saturation points, and I think the factories there are only running at 70% capacity. So they have extra capacity. So most recently, I think I covered a news story in a video, where the car companies in China are buying their own ships. They're buying their own ships because that's how much they have to export now. That they're not even going to rely on export agencies and companies.
BYD has one. Comes into Europort.
There you go. They're buying their own ships. So they are going
to be able to get a BYD car. I don't know if they're better than Rolls-Royce, but I would love to get a BYD SUV.
I've reviewed a few of them, and they are, you know what, they're actually really good. Literally, like you drive it and you're like, what's wrong with it? And you're like, well, there's nothing wrong with it. Nothing. I can't find anything wrong with it.
I mean, people were sort of super impressed by all the Kias and stuff, but how that seems to be, that there was a Korean, old piece of Korean crap, and now everybody's really said, oh, it's a Kia, it does this, does that. You did some fantastic reviews, which we did recently on the channel, and they look really great. But then you stick a BYD up against the side of it, you think,
BYD is great. I mean, I drove the
wow. You think, what is that for a car? And people stop. I've seen people stop and look at them. A normal domestic car, people stop and look at them in the parking.
And the thing about them is, you take BYD, you also take MG, which is doing really well in the UK now. This is a reincarnation of MG, and MG used to be a British brand, but actually it's a Chinese brand now. And the amount of car that they offer you for the money, it's just extraordinary. And the kit that you get, the standard kit that you will get on these cars, is just like, normally if you go to BMW, you end up paying twice the cost price of that BMW before you get that level of kit on the car. Whereas BYD or MG will be like, just have it. Just go for it.
Chuck it in.
It's incredible. I drove a BYD. I did a full loop of central London because I was trying to do a copy the route that the Superloop bus took. So I did the same loop. I didn't want to drive it in my car because I'd probably break the clutch on my left leg. One or two of these things would happen, So I had a seal coming in, a BYD seal, and I did it in that. And it was the most serene, leisurely, effortless drive ever. And it barely even used any EV charge. It was only when I hit the M25 and I picked up a bit of speed that it actually started to deplete the EV charge. Otherwise, it was absolutely fine. So yeah, we are seeing a major sea change. Now, the other thing about the interim solution between EVs, which I still think are here, and we're still here, and we still need to bridge this gap. And this gap is hybrids, but also there's another aspect that we haven't yet talked about or spoken about, which is sustainable fuels. So we're talking about e-fuels and we're talking about biofuels. And these are fuels that okay, they're not available in huge numbers. And yes, admittedly, before people, commenters are going to jump in and say, huge amount of energy needed to make them. Yes, but we're talking economies of scale. And eventually, at some point, that could work out. And I just did an interview, which is going to go live later today on my channel, where I spoke to a guy from Corriton, which is one of the companies that produced them. And they said, yes, we are already supplying this. But at the moment, we're supplying it to the classic car community. We're supplying it to motorsports. So we're trying to offset what is happening in those areas by providing them with either carbon extracted e-fuels or biofuels, which have grown from, waste crops or even waste alcohols, stuff like that. So, for example, King Charles runs his old Aston Martin on waste product from wine production. That's actually what he does, So it's incredible. So there are alternatives. So when people always say like, oh, EV is the only answer, or this is the only answer, I personally don't think so. I think the answer is a combination of different things that is going to be available. And I think that ultimately there's going to be more and more choice. So when you have the situation where you just do the 30 miles in town to school or to work or back or whatever, you go, hey, I'll have an EV. But when you go, oh, I need to visit my aunt in Bradford, and you go, okay, well, you know what, I can just call in a subscription service and get a petrol car and go in that. So I think the future is going to be a number of different things, not just one.
But is not the elephant in the room the petroleum companies?
In terms of what?
In terms of the fact that they don't want you to run your car on waste products.
Well, the thing is,
because they're so behind the curve. It's unbelievable.
Well, they're trying to get into. I mean, actually, you know what? Stephen will probably be able to comment on this better than me. But from my understanding is that they and the origin countries, if you like. So I know for a fact that Saudi Arabia, is investing in electric car companies. It's created its own one, and it's also invested in an American one as well. And it's the first ever car manufacturing plant. I think the first ever anything manufacturing plant in Saudi Arabia is going to be a car manufacturing plant for EVs. So I think that they are trying to get in on the game, and I think the oil companies and they are also doing it. As like I said, Stephen probably will know more than me on this, but I think that they try to hedge their bets and they try to go, well, let's put eggs in that basket as well, and that basket as well. And I think even with biofuels and stuff, there's a lot of money to be made. In extracting waste products to create fuel, but also the fact that there is a moral argument to work on carbon extraction from the air. Because if we talk about the fact that there's too much CO2 in the air, and that is what's causing our climate problems, then humanity, then you could argue, has a moral obligation to address that, rebalance it. And one of the ways that is being done is by creating carbon recovery facilities, which are happening around the world. And what they're talking about now, so if I just finish that, what they're talking about now with a lot of these people is that they talk about extracting that carbon and then burying it back in the air, in the ground, where it came from. But a lot of other people will say, well, that's stupidity. What's the point of doing that? Whereas what we can do is turn that back into fuel, and then we have an ecosystem of fossil fuel that's just going round and round, and we're not causing any damage to the environment. Sorry, go ahead, David.
I was going to say that the moral obligation doesn't stack up to the shareholders meeting. As simple as that.
Yeah, but that's the reality of a capitalist economy, isn't it?
But
that's with any company.
To the Saudi point, just like the UAE, Kuwait, Qatar, and the rest of them, they all realize at some point the dead dinosaurs are going to run out.
Yeah.
So when you look at their sovereign wealth funds, they are investing, whether it's in AI, whether it's in cars, whether it's in new tech, whatever it might be, because they all realize that in 2050, 2060, 2100, in that ballpark, dinosaurs are going to be done. Yeah. And then there's nothing. So they, I think Saudi Arabia also has the largest LNG going on. They are doing biofuels. I know Shell and BP are looking at palm oil. I mean, like, they're all looking at something because they're like, what's going to happen then? Like, got to have.
Yeah.
So,
but also, like you said, Stephen, the other thing is what people don't realize, that there are 6,000, and I know this because I just looked it up because I was just putting in a caption in a video. There are 6,000 other applications for petrochemical ingredients rather than just putting it in your car. So when people say, oh, we stopped using it in our cars and that will be the end of oil. No, we need oil for everything, from the stuff we eat to the stuff we wear. So we still need this stuff, or we'll need an alternative to this stuff. And I think these companies, that's what they're doing.
That sounds like a whole new show, guys. Don't you think so?
But before we go, I want to make we talked earlier about Ferrari. And we're talking about, and Rizzo's not here. So this means we can have a sane discussion.
Where did he disappear off to?
You know, he got his F40. Listen, on every show now he comes in, even his show, the cigar show on Saturday.
Is he an interloper now? Is that what he is?
Yes, he comes in and he goes F40, F50. I like, dude, you got to like every show now, even the one where we Lost Dollar Business Club, we talk about economics, F40, F50. These guys don't know what that is. They think it's some like new metrics that they've got to figure out some formula. But anyway, Ferrari, in my opinion, has lost its luster of 30 or 40 years ago because they're making cars now for everybody. And Lamborghini as well is getting to that point where they're all making cars, whether they're affordable or not, it's just that they're, instead of making like 1,000 cars a year, now they're making 12, 15, 16, 20. And it's a much different mentality than when, you know, the 250 GTO that my family had back in the day. It was like, how many are they? There's like 1,000 of them. Okay. But it's like they were special.
Well,
you didn't see them. And now you see them all the time.
This is the thing. I mean, back in the day, you know, if you saw, never mind a Countach, never mind an F40, anything with a prancing horse badge or a raging bull badge, you would absolutely lose it on the spot. You know, I remember seeing a Di Tommaso Pantera for the first time and just like basically my legs went weak. You know, I mean, you just like, you know, nowadays, like you walk around central London, Ferrari, Lamborghini, whatever, who cares? I walk down my high street here. There's a guy here who has a Lamborghini Aventador. He's got a small semi-detached house, but he's got a Lamborghini Aventador parked in there. I'm like, you know, what's happened to the world? And also there was the mythology of it. You know, you imagine
drug dealing. That's what's happened.
Yeah, well, you saw the Lamborghini. No, you saw a Lamborghini Miura, right, back in the day, and you thought either one of two people, right? Either you thought Medallion Man is going to come out of it, right? It's going to be like some super cool, groovy dude, or the best looking babe in the planet, some glamorous film actress is going to come out of it. You know, one or the other. And nowadays, you get one of these pull up. And then you find it's a teenager with a selfie phone going, "Oh, look at me!" That's all, and they're crashing it on the motorway. That's what they're doing. Did you see that? Did you see that recently?
Well, they have them here all the time where they're crashing because they're doing stupid donuts or whatever, and then they can lose control. And it's like, well, the first time I ever drove a car that had like real horsepower, the guy I was driving it with when he took me for the ride, he said, you know, just remember this has X in your car. You have like 100 times more. I drove it like a grandpa. And then after you get more comfortable, you go to a driving school, you're like, oh, I can drive this. And it's okay because it's just a car. It's just how you drive it. But these kids get in the car, they do the donuts, they slam into a tree. And I'm like, stupid. Just because your car can do 220. The speed limit here in Texas is 80. The police here are okay at 85, 90. But, you know, when you're trying to hit 220, they do frown on that. And it's sort of the same thing.
But also, it's like as you just pointed out, is that we become numb to the sensation of speed. You know, and that's the thing. Is like when I drove that Countach the first time that I drove it, I was 20 years old, right? I was in awe. And I was shaking. I was literally shaking when I got out of it, you know, literally. And the second time I drove it, I was like, it's not that quick, actually, you know, because that was like, you know, 15, 20 years of experience later, right? But here's the thing. With those cars, you still feel them. What I realized that had switched is I remember driving the Nissan GTR R35, the current generation, when it came out about a decade and a half ago. And we had a Lamborghini, no, we had a Cadillac CTSV in a manual gear shift Cadillac CTSV with 560 horsepower. And me and my deputy editor, we took the GTR and the Cadillac over to the east coast of the UAE and along our favorite mountain roads. And I drove the GTR on that road, and I got to the other end. And then at the end, I gave my deputy editor the key to the GTR. And he was like, Shazad, aren't you going to keep it? Aren't you going to drive it back? I said, no. He said, why? I said, because that's the fastest I've ever driven that road. In this GTR. That's the fastest I've ever driven it because of this car. And if I go back on that road, I'm probably going to go quicker. Now, the problem I have with that is that I don't know when it's about to go wrong because I can't feel what is happening. This car is doing all the thinking for me. Even in the Cadillac, you know, it's still a bit old school. And I can feel it. I have to change the gears. I can feel the clutch. I can feel where the grip is. It's rear-wheel drive. I can feel what's going on. This thing, I have no idea what's going on. So I'm going to go quicker and quicker and quicker until I'm not going to be going anywhere at all because I'm just going to end up a smear on the side of those mountains. That's what's going to happen. You know, and I think that's the problem is that we've lost that analog feel. So when you get all these teenagers that are jumping into these cars, the cars are stupendously quick. And like I said, you know, they're designed with the skill set of a Walter Roll. He's the person that's engineered them. That's who you need to be. You need to have godlike abilities to actually take those cars to the limit, right? Us mere mortals, we can't do that. Those kids jump into those cars. They have no comprehension of the ability of those cars, and they have no way to feel when the
Yeah.
car is getting beyond the limit or close to the limit. They can't feel it until it's too late.
There's a lot to be said for a standard shift, like the car we were speaking about before I got on air. I like the fact that it's a 7-speed
Yeah.
because that gives you a feel of the car,
Yeah.
and when you drive it, you have a feel of the road.
Yeah.
And people don't get that, because when you drive, like I was Ubering last week on the highway with a Tesla, and I said, "How do you like it?" Guy goes, "I love it." And he goes, "It goes really quick." I go, "How's the battery?" So we went from literally 60 to 100 this quick, and his battery's like, "Look, it's great." I'm like, "That's cool." I'm thinking to myself, you may want to slow down. It's a Tesla. I
Yeah.
don't want it to fall apart. But I mean, and that's the whole issue. It's the same.
But
with
also,
Ford, like,
but also, that's a lot of mass to
Yeah.
taking up to that momentum to
Yeah.
then have to slow down.
Yeah.
You think, the first time back in the day when we learned driving, and the first time we came around the corner and there was something in the road and we hit the brakes and the car skidded and we're like, "Oh shit,
Yeah.
not going to do that again." You know,
Yeah.
oh, that's what's happened when you lock the brake. Of course, now
Yeah.
you can't lock the brakes, right? Now the car is doing it all for you. Now it's
Yeah.
even braking for you. But back in the day, the first time you went around the corner too quick and the car went like that, and you went, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay, right, yeah, I don't want to do that again." You know, you immediately learned a lesson.
Mhm.
But the thing is, the car only did that; it only skipped because it,
Yeah.
you know, the level of grip wasn't, you know. Nowadays, if you let go in a car with tires that are that thick,
Yeah.
that's it. You're not getting
Yeah.
it back. You're not
Well,
getting
that's
it
why
back.
they have the controls now, right? Like you can do 0% or let it control it.
Yeah.
I'm like, of course you're going to let it control it. I'm not going to go around a corner,
Yeah.
even at 30 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And that kind of a car, I'm not talking about a Tesla, but that kind of a car, no. The computer's going to do that. You still have the feel and the grip. And I think we're losing that.
We lost it long time ago. And this is the other thing. There's a kind of a bravado, a fake bravado that happens in the motoring journalist community, where they go jump into a car. "I'm going to turn off all the systems. I'm going to turn off this, and I'm like, dude, I'm not turning off anything.
Turning them all on. Are you kidding?
And I'll tell you why. I remember driving. I went to the launch of the Ferrari 599 GTB in Fiorano in Italy, right?
Yeah.
And fortunately, we were actually allowed to drive on the famous Ferrari test track, you know.
Right.
And they got the Manettino, right? You got the Manettino button.
Yep.
And I think I turned it up to not quite the last one, but the one before last, and I immediately lost it. Right.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I caught it, and I thought, "Oh damn! I hope the people from Ferrari didn't see that. They probably did, because they got cameras all over the track."
Put it
But I
back
managed
down
to
on
catch.
comfort.
But I put it. So I was like, "Turn that back, you know." And that was on the track, and you go,
Yeah.
right. That was on a track where it's okay for that to happen. You don't want that
Right.
happening on the road, you know.
Correct.
So from that point on, I was like, I leave all the systems on. There is no need
Yeah.
to touch them. You know, the manufacturers have put them there for a reason.
That's right.
Let's leave them there. You know?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
guys, this manufacturer is going to touch him for a reason as well, because
Stop touching yourself. So that's all I can say.
We're well
Troy,
over
it's
the hour.
always a pleasure to see you, my friend. We will see you next month. And just to let everybody know, we do the show once a month with him, Brown Car Guy, and you can go see him on his channel. He has stuff on our channel. And today is November 4th, 2024. The reason I say that is tomorrow is November 5th, 2024. Here in America, people will be voting. It'll be the end of democracy. So we just wanted to say thanks for the experiment for the last 270 years. And we'll be under a dictatorship next year. So everybody.
And by the way, if you are all still alive and well within the next dozen days, so 12 days after from now, then it's my birthday, by the way. So just remember.
Happy birthday. When's your birthday? What day?
16th. So anybody wants to drop any cards or any gifts, you know.
There you go.
All I can say is it's a bummer you didn't make it. Bye-bye, everyone.